Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Car on the Hauler, my post-race show, post-Kansas weekend. I am a wee bit late on putting this video out this week, and I do apologize for that. But whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, I would greatly appreciate a like, comment, follow, subscribe, share, do whatever you need to do. I would greatly appreciate it. But like I said, NASCAR weekend in Kansas this past weekend. So we got to, of course, talk about the NASCAR O'Reilly Series and, of course, the NASCAR Cup Series, no Craftsman Truck Series racing this past weekend. But before we end up really talking about the races that we had and all the storylines we had from Kansas Speedway for the O'Reilly Series and the NASCAR Cup Series, I do have to go through the top 10 results. I have to update the points. And then, of course, quickly talk about our weekend winners. And of course, we'll talk more in depth about those winners later on, but let's get into that. Let's start with those weekend winners. In the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, we had Taylor Gray, driver of the number 54 for Joe Gibbs Racing, getting his second career victory. Overall, I'm very happy for Taylor Gray. Definitely wouldn't consider myself a Taylor Gray fan per se, but I do really like Taylor Gray. I mainly started liking him just because of what happened at Martinsville for those two straight times, one in a truck, one in an O'Reilly car, an Xfinity car at the time, where he had the win in his hands and got taken out twice in a row for that. And then finally did win at Martinsville earlier on in the year. And now gets another victory. Win number two of Taylor Gray's career. So very happy for that, for him. And then I don't think I need to change this graphic because it's just Tyler Reddick. Again, 5 times Tyler Reddick has won this year. He's won 5 out of the first 9 points races on the year if you include the Clash, 5 out of the 10 races so far this year. Either way, it's 50% or above on the year. Insane start to the year by Tyler Reddick. All right, now that we're done with the weekend winners, let's get in to the top 10 results from the weekend. Starting with the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, we had Taylor Gray take the dub. Sheldon Creed, my opinion, was the best car all day. I had to drive from the very back of the field all the way to the front and just wasn't quite able to get there in time to get the victory. Ran out of time, I'd say, and he ended up getting a P2 finish. We had Justin Allgaier, even though he was technically battling for the win at the end of this race. Honestly, he was I wouldn't say mediocre for Allgaier, I would say. I guess he was mediocre for Allgaier, but he wasn't a race-winning car, I'd say, but he was running top 5 pretty much all day. Overall, a quiet day for Allgaier, even though he finished P3. You had Jesse Love finish 4th. Jesse Love had a very strong start to the year. And then the last couple of weeks, last month or so, he's really kind of fallen off a little bit. Not as much as his teammate Austin Hill, who's really struggling, it seems like, right now. But Jesse Love getting P4. You had Brent Cruz, the young Brent Cruz, still looking for that first win. Overall had a good day, getting a top 5 finish. You had William Byron, who, other than taking out Carson Quaffle, and I'll talk about that in a second, other than taking out Carson Quaffle, had a very quiet day, I would say, with the 6th place finish. Definitely very impressed by our 7th place finisher of Cole Custer, who hasn't really done anything in Cup. I wouldn't 100% put that on him. It's the race team he races for. Haas just isn't a great race team on the Cup Series level at the moment, so that's unfortunate for Cole, who I think Cole's a very talented race car driver. And racing for SS Greenlight, not the greatest race team, but when Cole Custer gets in that 0 car, it's a Haas factory team car. It's no longer an SS Greenlight car. It's a Haas factory team car that got brought to SS Greenlight, so that's essentially a 3rd Haas car, and had a great run, getting a 7th place finish. Brandon Jones in 8th. His finish doesn't tell the story. Brandon Jones, I felt like, was the dominant guy all day, and maybe didn't keep up with adjustments or something, because he definitely wasn't the best car in the 3rd stage. And then you have Sam Mayer get a top 10. Great job by Mayer getting a top 10. It's been a tough year for Sam Mayer. He's been kind of outshined by his teammate, Sheldon Creed, throughout most of the year. And then Ryan Sieg rounds out your top 10. Had, honestly, a very good day. Honestly, probably could have gotten a better finish than 10th, but had a really good day, finishing in the 10th spot. Now let's move on to our top 10 for the NASCAR Cup Series. Of course, we had Tyler Reddick get his 5th win of the year. Kyle Larson with a P2 finish after having a very strong day, leading a bunch of laps, and he hasn't won a race in over a year, y'all. I can't believe that. Kyle Larson has not won a race in over a year. Chase Briscoe really benefited off that late caution caused by Cody Ware spinning it around. He ended up being on a different strategy than a lot of your leaders by taking the 4 tires. Give him one more lap, and Chase Briscoe probably would have gotten his first win of the year. We had Denny Hamlin, who you give him 200 more yards before Cody Ware spins out, and he probably wins the race. Denny Hamlin with the P4 finish was the dominant car throughout the day. Bubba Wallace ran top 10 most of the day, ended up squeaking out a top 5 finish. You had Brad Keselowski in 6th. You had William Byron in 7th. Chase Elliott. Like all 3 of these guys, Brad K, William Byron, Chase Elliott, very quiet days for the most part. Just kind of hung around anywhere between 5th and 15th throughout most of the day, these guys. Ty Gibbs, off of his win at Bristol, had a decent day running in the top 10. And then Buescher probably could have gotten a better finish, but just things didn't turn out the way he probably wanted to at the end of this race, but still wound it up with the top 10. So good finish by Chris Buescher, or Christopher Buescher, or Mr. Buescher. All right, now that we've gone through the top 10 results for the Cup Series and the O'Reilly Series, let's take a look at our points update post-Kansas for the O'Reilly Series and the Cup Series. No, not really any changes at the top 3 of the points. Of course, Allgaier is still with the commanding lead of 131 points on Sheldon Creed. You have Jesse Love, 3rd in points, 149 back. And then we look back at the bubble battle, where we have Taylor Gray moving up to 9th in points. He's 226 points back of the points lead. You have William Sawalich, 10th in points, 249 points back of the points lead. You have Retzloff, who probably could have gotten another top 10, I feel like. I feel like he was probably going to have good speed in this event, especially seeing how well his teammate Anthony Alfredo was doing throughout a good portion of the race. Got taken out early with that Carson Quaffle incident, ended up finishing way in the back, but he's currently 11th in the points, 262 points back of Justin Allgaier. And then on the cutoff, we have Raja Caruth, who's 266 points back of Justin Allgaier. And then we look outside the playoffs, looking in. The first guy looking in at the moment right now would be Ryan Sieg, who's 25 points back of Raja. And then we have Sam Mayer, 14th in points, who is 29 points back of Raja Caruth. Now we'll take a look at the Cup Series standings. Of course, we have Tyler Reddick still leading the points, a commanding point lead, 105 points on Dennis the Menace, Denny Hamlin. And Hamlin switched spots with Blaney. Blaney now 120 points back of Tyler Reddick after not having a very good performance in Kansas. And then we'll look back at the bubble battle and who is in, who is out. 13th in points, we have Ryan Preece, 222 points back of the points lead. We have Joey Logano falling back to 14th in the points, 232 points back of the points lead. We have Chase Briscoe finally getting into the chase after his 3rd place finish, 15th in points, 243 points back of the points lead. And then currently on the cut line, you have Daniel Suarez, 247 points back of Justin Allgaier. And then we look at who is looking in to make it to the chase. We have Austin Cindric, who is 13 points back of Daniel Suarez. And then we have SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen, and he is 32 points back of Daniel Suarez, making it to the chase right now. And we have some road courses coming up, so maybe SVG is able to move back in. But SVG lost a couple spots this week, falling outside of the bubble. All right, now that we're done talking about all that, the top 10s, points update, all that, let's actually get to talking about these races. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and the NASCAR Cup Series at Kansas. So let's start with that O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at Kansas. Overall, a good race. Not an amazing race. Definitely not an amazing race, but I'd say it was overall a good race. But before we really even got started, other than obviously Sheldon Creed starting at the back, which we'll talk about in a little bit, we had Carson Quaffle flip over the week before Talladega. You thought that would happen actually at Dega. That's a Daytona thing. I mean, it's not like we've never seen a car flip on a speedway before. It's really rare. You don't really see it all that often. And to have it happen that early on in the race just got started. And Carson Quaffle's flipping down the back straightaway. That wreck was on William Byron, I would say, as well. I think it wasn't anything intentional by any means, but William Byron flat out took out Carson Quaffle. It ended up taking out Parker Retzlaff. In the process, I've talked a lot about Parker Retzlaff over the last couple of weeks, last month or so, I would say. I've actually talked about Retzlaff longer than that, just because I think he's a very talented driver. I think he does the best on what he can do with the equipment that he has. And he's done that all year and probably would have gotten another top 10 finish, I feel like, this week. But he got caught up in that incident along with Carson Quaffle. Carson Quaffle was on his lid for quite a while. Eventually, they finally got the car flipped over and got Carson Quaffle out of the car. I thought he was going to be okay. It didn't seem like everybody. I mean, obviously, the wreck was gnarly. And once the workers got there, obviously, initially, I'm like, that's a very scary incident. I hope Carson Quaffle's okay. But once the whole crew surrounded the car and they were doing what they were doing, I was like, all right, I think Carson Quaffle is probably fine, or they would be a little bit more frantic right now about doing that. But yeah, they flipped the car over. He got out of the car, walked away, not even walked away gingerly, just seemed fine. I really liked Carson Quaffle's interview once he came out of the infield care center. Obviously, he was upset that he wrecked and this and that. He obviously was very upset, but at the same time, there was that little part of him, you could see it in the way he was kind of carrying himself. There's a little part of him just like, did I just flip at Kansas? That's a very weird racetrack to flip at. I mean, we've seen flips at, like I said, we've seen flips at mile-and-a-half sort of tracks before, like Charlotte. We've seen it at Vegas. We've seen it at different tracks before. I think it's even happened at Kansas before. We've seen a flip at Kansas before. It's very rare. Very rare we see that sort of wreck at Kansas. And I understand why it happened. He got pretty much T-boned in the side, and I think they just lifted the car up just enough where the air got under it. When Carson Quaffle's car went in the air, it looked like it weighed 5 pounds. The way it flew into the air, it was like, it looked like it weighed 5 pounds. I can't believe the car flipped like that. That was a gnarly wreck to start the race. But luckily, Carson Quaffle was all good. He was okay. I feel bad for Carson Quaffle though, because he's been stringing along these consistent runs pretty much every week. Like, I've talked a lot about Corey Day. I've talked a lot about Parker Retzlaff because they're consistently right there in top 5, top 10 every single week. But right there along with those two, I would probably put Carson Quaffle and Sammy Smith. And Sammy Smith got involved in an incident as well that I'll talk about here in a second. And they both have been just putting together these consistent runs week in and week out. And to just have that happen to Carson, just very unfortunate for sure. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the incident between Carson Quaffle, Parker Retzlaff, and do you agree with me that William Byron was the cause of that? And that's just my opinion. I think most people share that opinion. But let me know your thoughts in the comments about that. All right, and that will have us move on to the other wreck I was just kind of briefly talking about, and that was Sammy Smith and Corey Day. I've talked very highly about Corey Day over the last month because he's had an issue in his career so far of just really getting into trouble, just causing accidents, just being too aggressive, not really having the greatest racing IQ, I would say. But he clearly has the raw speed. He's clearly a great race car driver. He clearly has what it takes to potentially become a winner in the O'Reilly Series and possibly even very competitive in the Cup Series. I could see that in his future for sure with how good he is just off the rip, just off pure speed. He's fantastic. And I've been commending him over the last couple of weeks, really all year when it comes to how well he's finishing. I've been commending him all year on that. But when it comes to these last couple of weeks, he's getting top 10s every week, but he's not causing any trouble. And I feel like that's how it's been probably since about Phoenix. He's just been not causing any trouble, not causing wrecks, not doing this, not doing that. But I did feel like he caused this incident with himself and Sammy Smith. Yeah, just in my opinion, just flat out took him out. I would put all the blame on Corey Day when it comes to this incident. Just being a little bit overly aggressive with essentially his teammate there over at Junior Motorsports. Essentially a teammate, I guess not quite a teammate. It's a Hendrick Motorsports car, but it's a Junior Motorsports car pretty much. It's pretty much a teammate. And he took him out. He took him out. I know it wasn't intentional or anything like that. I know Corey Day didn't mean to do it, but we've seen this from Corey Day many times. and he just needs to continue to clean it up. He's been doing very well over the last month or so, and I'll give him that credit. I'll give credit where it's due. I'll give someone their flowers if they deserve it. And I'd say at this moment, not necessarily this moment, but over the last month, I'd say Corey Day has kind of earned those flowers. He's kept out of trouble. He's running top 5, top 10 every week. He's leading laps. He's doing everything that we really want him to do. But then he took out Sammy Smith at Kansas. Just flat out took him out. They probably have already discussed it. I assume they're probably good. They're probably cool. I don't see any rivalry or anything building up from this. But it just proves once again that Corey Day isn't necessarily all there when it comes to a full package of a race car driver. He still needs to build up that racing IQ. He still needs to learn a lot. He needs to gain experience. He clearly has the raw speed. I've said it many times. And I do think if he plays his cards right and plays out, not obviously the rest of the season, because they're not going to decide who's driving the 48 car at the very end of the year. So over these next 2-3 months, he really needs to work his ass off. If Corey Day continues to do what he has been doing over the last month with a lot of speed, staying out of trouble, this and that, I think the 48 car is all his. I think the 48 car is his to have at that point. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but I do see that as a potential future for him racing in the Cup Series as early as next season in that 48 car. But yeah, Corey Day just messed up, took out Sammy Smith. Luckily, they were both able to come back, even with the damages they had. Luckily, they were both able to come back to still get decent finishes. Corey Day got 12th. Sammy Smith, got 16th. So they still got not great finishes, probably not as good as finishes they would have gotten if that wreck didn't happen. But I thought they were both done. I thought both their days were probably done, and they were able to come back and still get some decent finishes out of that. So that's a plus, I guess, just from the incident that had happened. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about that incident with Sammy Smith and Corey Day? And then this lets us move on to really the end of the race for the most part. I do want to briefly talk about Brandon Jones, though right before that, Brandon Jones just has another fantastic day. Anytime we go to Darlington, anytime we go to Kansas, Brandon Jones is going to compete for the win. There's just certain tracks where Brandon Jones just kicks all sorts of ass. I don't know what it is, but at certain racetracks, Brandon Jones is just the man. He's the man to beat at some of these tracks. But then when you go to other tracks, I wouldn't say he's middle of the pack, but out of like the best drivers in the series, he's he's in the middle of that. You know, he's like a top 10 guy. He's like a 10th place guy at a lot of tracks. But every time we go to Darlington or anytime we go to Kansas, this guy just kicks ass all day. Just shows how, like, Brandon Jones is definitely a good race car driver, but he shows he's a really good race car driver when we go to Darlington and Kansas. And that's what he was doing pretty much all day. Obviously, didn't end up with the victory, still wound it up with a top 10 finish. But what could have been? Brandon Jones could have gotten a victory, wasn't quite able to get the victory, had arguably the best car. I think by the end of the race, it was clear to me. It was actually pretty clear to me early on in the event that he might not have the best car, but it was very clear to me once it got down to the end of the race that Sheldon Creed was the best car. He was the best driver in the field on Saturday, in my opinion. I don't know if everybody shares that same opinion, but I feel like he was the best car and just ran out of time at the very end. And let's get to that finish now, because Brandon Jones is really fast, but so was Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole, I would say. William Sawalich had his issues. He got involved in an incident as well. I think he was part of that Sammy Smith, Corey Day incident as well, and he ended up getting, I think, 20th in the event. But he had decent speed, I would say. And then Taylor Gray. Taylor Gray had really good speed. I'd say he had top 5 speed throughout the whole race. By the end of the race, by the adjustments they were able to make and this and that, I felt like he had a top 3 car. And then he got in that clean air, and clean air was king, as it usually is. And clean air really helped his car, I feel like. And he was able to put a little distance between himself, Sheldon Creed, and Justin Allgaier. In the last stage near the end of this race, he wasn't the best getting through lap traffic. Sheldon Creed was driving him down at the end of this race, and I just feel like Sheldon Creed ran out of laps. Maybe if he gets 5 or 10 more laps, maybe he gets it done, because it was back and forth. Like, Sheldon Creed would catch up a little bit, then lose a little bit of time. He'd catch up a little bit, lose a little time. So I think he would need a little bit of time, like 5, maybe 10 laps, and Sheldon Creed maybe could have taken the win. I do feel like Creed had the best car at the end of this race, but Taylor Gray, congratulations to Taylor Gray. Taylor Gray gets another win. I'm fond of Taylor Gray. Main reason I'm fond of Taylor Gray is just honestly after getting screwed over at Martinsville twice in a row, once in an O'Reilly car, once in a truck, but then he finally got his first win. He got his first win at Martinsville, and now he gets another win. He gets another win here at Kansas Speedway for the O'Reilly Series race, and just put on a great performance. He just did everything he needed to do to win. Jason Ratcliffe once again shows how great of a crew chief he is. I miss him being on the top of Kyle Busch's pit box. Jason Ratcliffe has always been such a phenomenal crew chief, and he's now crew chiefing obviously down in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and he made a golden call, set up Taylor Gray with the great opportunity to win the race, and he got the job done. Flat out, Taylor Gray got the job done and got to celebrate in victory lane once again. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the end of that race? Taylor Gray getting the win, Brandon Jones having a dominant day but not winning, and then Sheldon Creed just really running out of time at the end of this race. All right, let's get to the topics that we have from the NASCAR Cup Series race here. I got to start with Penske and Trackhouse. I'm going to start with the negatives on this one, and that's Penske and Trackhouse. I said before the weekend, if you watched my NASCAR preview video, that Penske just does not have really any success at Kansas. They're not very good at Kansas. I don't know what it is about Kansas. They just haven't figured that place out. Obviously, they didn't do very well at Vegas earlier on in the year, and I would compare Vegas a little bit to that. But usually they have a lot of success at Vegas. So the earlier in the year was a little bit off-putting to see them not have much success at Vegas earlier on in the year. But then Kansas, Penske just seems to not ever do well there, whether it's Blaney or Logano, or even back when they had Brad Kay, and Cindric, obviously. They just don't really have a lot of success at Kansas, so I didn't expect them to have a lot of success, but they were just awful. They were awful across the board. They were all, even Blaney was awful. They were all bad. If Blaney's finishing outside the top 20, that's a problem for Penske, because he's the guy that's running top 5, top 10, while everybody else sometimes is running 15th or 20th or even worse. They were all bad. Penske was awful in Kansas, but they weren't the only ones. Trackhouse were also just completely awful as well. Trackhouse was awful. Ross Chastain running outside the top 30 for a good amount of the day. Zilich for a good amount of the day was running either last or second to last. SVG honestly started off the race really strong, but then he fell back, and then he was outside the top 30 for on the second half of the day. And it's kind of been the story for the whole year for Trackhouse. They look horrible. Trackhouse look really bad on all fronts. If Ross Chastain, I wouldn't consider myself like a big Ross Chastain fan. I wouldn't consider myself a hater either. Kind of like on the fence with Ross. I like what he brings, this and that. I think he's a good driver. And I honestly think he's a top 10, like just pure skill-wise in the Cup Series. I think he's a top 10 guy. Easily. Maybe even argument for a top 5 guy. He's definitely a top 10 guy. For sure. And he doesn't look like one. He doesn't look like a top 10 guy. He's been pretty awful all year. He's not competitive at all. Connor Zilich. I'm a big Connor Zilich fan. I think some of you have heard me say this before. Whenever Kyle Busch retires, Connor Zilich is going to be my new favorite guy in the Cup Series. I determined that around a year and a half, 2 years ago at this point. I just think Zilich is the future of this sport. And he clearly still has a lot to learn. Like, he's obviously one of the most talented drivers in NASCAR, period. He still has a lot to learn. He has a lot of raw talent, a lot of raw speed, but he has a lot to learn. And it's kind of tough to learn when you're in such a bad race car, because you don't know what good feels like. And obviously Trackhouse have had their moments, especially in this era of car. They've had their moments of just looking like a really good race team, a race team that could compete with your Hendrick Motorsports, with your Joe Gibbs, with your Penske, and this and that. And this week they were just competing with Penske, which wasn't a good thing for this weekend. They looked awful, and they've been looking awful all season. Penske looked awful. They haven't looked awful all season, but they haven't been great, at least other than Blaney. Blaney's been phenomenal. I'm not gonna take away anything from Blaney. Blaney's been kicking all sorts of ass, and arguably Blaney should have 2, 3, 4 wins right now. Arguably. Logano, he's been trash all year. Cindric, he's been trash all year. Josh Berry, he's been trash all year. Penske / Wood Brothers have been ass all year. Trackhouse has been ass all year. SVG has been the standout at Trackhouse, which is overall a little surprising to me because you have Ross Chastain there, and I think Ross Chastain's a top 10 driver. I think SVG is probably in that conversation of top 10 skill-wise overall, but at the same time, he hasn't really learned the ovals. I mean, he's getting a lot better. I don't know what's going on over there. I really don't. And then you have Daniel Suarez, who's looking phenomenal. Suarez is my guy. People know how much I love Suarez. I fucking love Suarez. He's awesome. And he's looking like a genius right now. And any chance he gets on a mic, any chance he gets to bury Trackhouse, he does it, which I find a little funny. I do find it a little bit funny. He's being a little petty with the stuff. I agree. But at the same time, it's a little bit funny. It's like I was like finally Justin seeing what I saw, like just talking about Justin Marks, because he's doing great. Daniel Suarez might make the playoffs when we might not see a single Trackhouse car make the playoffs. Obviously, we have a bunch of road courses coming up. We have 3 road courses in the next couple of weeks coming up, so that very well could change. We could see Shea knock off a couple wins. We can maybe see Zilich. I think at this point, though, even if Zilich kicks ass the rest of the year, Zilich is probably not going to make the playoffs, if we're being honest. But SVG, I think, still has a legitimate chance at the playoffs if he gets a couple of wins on these road courses and continues to do what he's been doing on ovals, and that's like running top 15, top 20. I could definitely see him making the playoffs. I keep on calling it the playoffs, the chase. I think you're saying it the chase again. I'm still not used to calling it the chase again. And then Chastain, I think Chastain still has a shot at the playoffs, but he's going to really need to pick it up really everywhere. He can't just rely on a couple of races here and there. Every single week we need to be seeing Chastain in the top 10, or he might not make the playoffs either. And Trackhouse might go 0-3 and just completely strike out on the playoffs this year. It's really tough to watch. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Trackhouse's overall performance all year, really? And Trackhouse and Penske's performance at Kansas Speedway. All right, let's get into this last topic, which is the end of this race, plus Denny just having a Denny day. Denny was phenomenal all day. I do think there was a couple other guys out there that had really good speed throughout a good portion of the day. I'd probably put Kyle Larson in that, and a couple other drivers as well. But I think Denny was the best car all day. Had a phenomenal day. Ran fantastic. I think at the end of that race, Christopher Bell came on, and he began to really figure it out at the end of this race. And Christopher Bell had really good speed at the very end of this race for sure as well. But Denny, he was the king of the day. Denny ran court. He was the guy. He was the guy to beat at Kansas. Some people, I guess I'll cover this part of this as well. A lot of people I noticed didn't really enjoy the race. I personally really liked the race. I wouldn't say it was like my favorite race ever, or even my favorite race at Kansas, especially after the last couple of years at Kansas. We've been getting barn burner after barn burner. I would say this wasn't quite a barn burner, but it was still very entertaining. We saw a tire fall off. We saw passing. We saw a green flag pit stop strategy, which I'm always quite fond of seeing that. And we had a great finish, even though the finish was, the way we ended up with the finish was kind of bullshit. But we had a great finish, It was a great day. You don't need wrecks to have a good race, in my opinion. I think some people have differing opinions on that. But to get to the subject at hand, which is Denny, and then the end of this race, Denny completely dominated the race. I heard his interviews afterward. He was obviously very disappointed. He had Michael Jordan messing with him a little bit, which was fun to see. I enjoyed that for sure. But I didn't enjoy Denny not winning, because I always like the best driver. If you're the dominant guy, I want to see you win, especially when we get those cautions at the very end like that. Because there was like 1 1/3, 1 1/4 laps left, or they're approaching the white flag to make the race official. We hadn't had a single wreck, a single spin, the entire race. A clean race. We hardly ever see that. A clean race, not a single wreck. There was only 2 cautions, and they were for the stage breaks. I'm one of the people that I didn't want to see those cautions. I don't like cautions when it comes to the stage breaks. So in my opinion, should have probably been 0 cautions, but that's a discussion that I have already had, but I will discuss it more on another day. But we did have the caution coming to the white flag, which set up the green-white checkered finish. We had Cody Ware spin out. Honestly, not a big surprise. Of course, it's Cody Ware. The only other person that I would be less surprised is if it was Rowdy, the way Rowdy has been as of late, and just overall in this next gen era, he spins a lot. But Cody Ware would have been right there with him. I'm not all that surprised. I do want to give Cody Ware a little bit of an excuse though, because he was apparently on over 65 lap old tires, which is insane. I think that's probably the longest anybody ran on a set of tires throughout most of the day. Obviously, in that last stage, you had a couple people doing stuff like that. But throughout the whole entire day, it was usually like 40, 45 laps, something like that, come down pit road. So 65 laps was a pretty insane number for the day because we saw how the tires were falling apart and they were cording, and Cody Ware's tires were cording, and he spun. He spun. And that really sucked. The timing on it was completely awful because it set up a green-white checkered finish, and it made an exciting finish. It definitely made for a very exciting finish. You had, I think, the front 9 ended up staying out on 2 tires. They all decided to take 2 tires. And when they were coming down pit road, I'm like, you have to take 4. With the way these tires were cording and the way everything was going, I was like, you have to take 4 tires. If you don't take 4 tires, you're probably going to be screwed. But the fact that 9 drivers took 2 tires, I think that's what made the difference. Because you had Chase Briscoe being the first driver on 4 tires, and it almost turned out to be just like how it was in the fall. Because in the fall, you had Chase Elliott take 4 tires, and everybody in front of him took 2. And then you had Denny Hamlin and Bubba Wallace driving into 3 and 4. Of course, Denny gets up into Bubba. They almost wreck. Denny tries to come back down the track. Chase Elliott's already there. Chase Elliott wins the race on 4 tires. We almost saw the same thing happen, but with the other Chase, with Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe took 4 tires, drove all the way from outside the top 10, drove up to 3rd, coming into the final corner, and you have Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick. At this point, Denny's not even in the mix. Denny ends up getting a 4th place finish, so unfortunate for Denny for sure. But it looked like we could have potentially had the same situation. I even said to myself right before they went to 3 and 4, I'm like, Larson's going to take him out here. I thought Larson was going to take out Reddick there in the final corner. They didn't. They kept it clean, and Reddick made the pass and got the victory. Great pass, by the way. Reddick just with some badass moves there at the end ends up making the pass on Kyle Larson to get the victory. His 5th victory of the season. He's won 5 out of the 9 races. Well, out of the regular season races. If you include the Clash, 50%, I guess, if you include the Clash. But if we're talking about just points racing, he's won more than 50% of the races. Phenomenal start to the year for Tyler Reddick. On the opposite side of the coin, you had both Denny Hamlin lose after having a fantastic day, looking to get another win on the year. And then you had Kyle Larson, who has now gone over a year without winning a race. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh man, Kyle Larson's lost it. He's not great anymore. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's crazy to me to think that Larson he hasn't won a race in a whole year. He was in an IndyCar before his last win. He was racing in Indianapolis in an IndyCar before his last win. That's crazy. That's crazy to me. Larson has not won a race in such a long time. I can't believe that, because I consider Larson the best driver in our sport, period. And he hasn't won in a year. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. But to get back to Reddick winning 5 out of 9 races. I think there's definitely some mixed opinions on this. I think some people, like myself, are happy. I wouldn't say happy per se, but I'm perfectly okay with it. I look on the brighter side of it. I do like Reddick. I wouldn't say I'm a Reddick fan per se, but I do really like Reddick. I do have one of his t-shirts. I do like Reddick for sure. Actually, I have 2. I got his Daytona 500 shirt actually as well. I got 2 actually, but I like Reddick. Overall, I probably would have wanted another guy to go to victory lane. Probably, I would love to see Bubba. Come on, give a win to Bubba. I wouldn't say Bubba deserves a win, but just give Bubba a win. You've won 5. Give your teammate one, okay? Give your teammate one. That'd be cool. But nonetheless, overall, I'm okay with Reddick winning because, and I've said it many times, it's because of the promotion he brings to our sport with Michael Jordan being his owner, being his team owner. Michael Jordan's the boss, so people on X and people on Instagram and Facebook and all that, they're like, Michael, like people that are inside the NASCAR circle are like, my gosh, damn it. Tyler Reddick has won 5 races. Can another driver win? Can my favorite driver win? While the people outside of the NASCAR bubble are like, Michael Jordan won again. Michael Jordan's the GOAT, And it actually gets the pop culture zeitgeist talking at least a little bit, And with the way our viewership is, with the way everything has been this year, obviously the start of the year was red hot, I feel like. And then I think we've lost our steam over the last couple of weeks. So maybe Reddick helps out with that a little bit, juices it up a little bit, if you will. Because it's been tough watching the viewership go down and down and down over the last couple of weeks. That's been very unfortunate to see. Mainly because of the racing, I feel like. The racing has been pretty bad over the last couple of weeks. The last month almost at this point. But we had, in my opinion, a good race. I looked at Jeff Gluck's poll. It was 50-50 down the middle. So there's some differing opinions. Maybe if we don't have Reddick win, maybe it ends up being 60-40. 60% of the people like the race, but at the same time, people like the exciting finish. We had a very exciting, somewhat dramatic finish. It's a great finish to the race. So that adds on the other way as well. So 50-50, I guess, is probably fair because I did see a lot of people disappointed in the race. I do feel like a lot of people were disappointed in the race because I can't, like I said earlier, Kansas is it's been a barn burner. Every single time the Cup Series goes there, it's one of the best races of the year. And that's how it's been the last couple of seasons, ever since we got into this next-gen era car. It's been a barn burner every single time. And I would agree that it wasn't necessarily a barn burner. It was still a very good race. Like I mentioned, we saw a good amount of passing. We saw a lot of tire fall off, which I was quite fond of. I like to see the tire fall off. Good job, Goodyear, especially after such a bad weekend, in my opinion, for Goodyear in Bristol. A good weekend in Kansas, I would say. I would have to give them their credit. I thought they brought tires that actually fell off, which is fantastic. And we saw a lot of strategy, mainly because we didn't have a lot of cautions. We only had the cautions for the stage breaks, plus, of course, we had the caution to set up the green-white checkered. But other than that, we didn't have any cautions. So it created a lot of green flag pit strategy, mainly because of the way the tires were cording. They were falling apart, mainly because of that. Some drivers would short pit, some guys would long pit. I like seeing the different strategies. Obviously, I would like to see some more fuel strategy thrown in there, but that ain't going to happen until they remove the stage cautions. I would love to see fuel strategy be something. Fuel strategy really isn't a thing nowadays for the most part. But overall, saw good strategies throughout the day. Saw good racing. I overall enjoyed the race. And then Reddick gets five wins on the year. Michael Jordan's so involved right now. He's more involved now than he's ever been because I feel like mainly because they are winning so much. They have 5 wins. Fucking Michael Jordan was even there for qualifying. He was even there for practice and qualifying. He was hanging out on pit road for practice and qualifying. At this point, he might be one of the most, if not the most, well, actually, no, it's probably Richard Childress. Richard Childress is still probably the most active owner, and I'm not including Denny, I'm not including Brad, because they're racing, But I'd say he's probably, other than maybe Richard Childress, I would really have to think about it, but he might be the most active owner. Obviously, Jack Roush is never at the track anymore. Rick Hendrick, he's never at the track anymore either. Coach Gibbs, that's someone that might be more active. Coach Gibbs is always there. Coach Gibbs is always at the racetrack. Michael Jordan's always at the racetrack pretty much at this point. Justin Marks, for the most part, is at the racetrack. He isn't always at the racetrack. Roger Penske isn't ever at the racetrack. So I think that's a good discussion to potentially have in the future. But I love to see it. I love to see Michael Jordan celebrate. I love Michael Jordan getting the interviews. Him and Jamie Little definitely have a connection because Michael Jordan doesn't usually do interviews, but he does interviews. Anytime Jamie Little asks for one, he does it because he must really like Jamie. They must have a good relationship, which is really good. That's really good to have, and I'm thankful for Jamie Little when it comes to that because maybe you put somebody else out there and maybe they don't want to talk. Maybe you put Josh Sims out there and he don't want to talk to Josh Sims. I don't know. Maybe you put Myatt Snyder or somebody out there like that and they don't want to talk. Kimmy Kuhn, who knows? who knows if he would talk to anybody else. So good job on Jamie Little for that. Jamie Little always getting us the Michael Jordan interviews, which automatically just gives us more credibility and more eyes on our sport, which is something we really need right now. So overall, that's why I'm okay with Reddick winning the race. Am I like, fuck yeah, Reddick won again? Not necessarily, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with him winning again. Obviously, there's going to come a certain point, and if he keeps on doing what he's doing, where I'm going to be like, all right, woosah, let's chill. Like, if he wins 10 out of the first 20 races or something like that, I'm going to have to be like, all right, let's woosah. Let's calm down. Let's chill. Let's maybe put Reddick out for 2 or 3 races, have him sit on the bench for 2 or 3 races, give him a little bit of a handicap or something like that, because he's just kicking ass. And I think it's the mixture of two things. I consider Reddick, I've said this many times, I consider Reddick top 3 in the Cup Series on pure raw talent. I have Larson number 1. I got Bell and Reddick very close for number 2. I'd probably give the slight edge to Bell, but I might need to be rethinking that with the way Reddick's been racing so far this year. And like I said, Reddick would be number 3. And obviously 23XI have figured something out. I don't know if they're in a gray area. I don't know if they've just figured out something perfect with the setup. I'm not sure. I know it's not anything cheating or anything too crazy, and I doubt it's in the gray area, because you got to keep in mind 23XI shares all their information with Joe Gibbs Racing and vice versa. They have a relationship. They work together. So take that as you will. So I don't think there's anything. Take your tinfoil hats on. I don't think there's anything like that going on. And if it was, if NASCAR was allowing all this cheating, why didn't Chase Elliott win a bunch of championships? He only has 1. Why did Junior never win a championship? He has none. Why? Like, if they wanted even more promotion, they'd have Bubba Wallace win instead of Tyler Reddick. They would have had Bubba Wallace win 5 races instead of Tyler Reddick if they really wanted that promotion. And yeah, I think Reddick's just a talented guy, and 23XI have something figured out with their strategy, that because you see Reddick winning 5 races. Bubba Wallace is consistently a top 5, top 10 guy, and has actually competed for some wins this season so far every week. You have Riley Herbst, who's had 2 straight great races. Obviously, he didn't get the finish he wanted at Bristol. I think he still ended up getting like 16th or something, but he was like a top 10 car at Bristol for the most part. And then at Kansas this past weekend, he got top 15. All 4 23XI cars finished top 15, because, of course, you had Corey Heim racing the 67. So just a phenomenal start for 23XI and Tyler Reddick. Just a great start to the year. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the Advent Health 400 at Kansas Speedway? Plus, Denny not able to quite get the win, but Reddick gets number 5. 5th win on the season for Reddick. Also, let me know, when is Young Money going back to victory lane? Let me know. All right, now that I am done with all of that, that'll actually do it for this week's edition of Car on the Hauler post Kansas. And of course, we'll have another edition of Car on the Hauler next week when we go to Dega. We go to Dega this weekend. So check in for my Car on the Hauler post Dega. I might even throw in a little bit of ARCA talk in there, because we do have a lot of cars racing in the ARCA race. And of course, we have Cletus McFarlane and Squirrel McNutt in that ARCA series race. So might even talk a little bit about ARCA next week, depending on how all that goes. So definitely tune into that. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow, share, do whatever you need to do, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify. But for now, I'm Trackside Larry, and I'm saying peace.